Do you really want to dive deeply into the Bible? This video presentation will help you do that. What follows is a comparison of contrasting features between United States and biblical, i.e. Mediterranean society. Get really familiar with this video, folks, because the more you do so, the more light will be shed on biblical persons, concepts, objects, and events. Let's start with communities. According to United States society, Americans, including Christians, generally believe that people have to freely join communities. Americans tend to have broad, shallow relationships rather than deep, long-term ones. Americans avoid obligations and indebtedness to others. By the way, when I say Americans, I mean United States people. In contrast, Mediterranean personalities, including Jesus and everybody else in the New Testament, believe that people have no choice but to fit into inherited communities. They have extremely few relationships, but they're always deep, and they exist embedded in these communities. In fact, in the Bible, if you join another group, it really involves a death and rebirth process. In actuality, the biblical person is dying the death to the old family. And that's why we read Jesus in the Gospels talking how his group members have to completely cut off or hate father and mother, wife and child, friends and possessions. Every Mediterranean group would agree that's prerequisite to join and be part of any Mediterranean family or faction. And life outside of being embedded into some family is unthinkable for Mediterranean society. Biblical life is inescapably communitarian. So whenever you hear United States Christians going on endlessly about their personal relationship with Jesus, it's Jesus and them and Jesus, private one-on-one relationship, know for certain that's a contradiction to the New Testament world. There is nothing private about the members of the Jesus group. And that brings me to privacy. In United States society, Americans, including Christians, demonstrate an unwillingness to enter the private lives of other people, or to have others infringe upon them and enter into their own private life. In contrast, Mediterranean personalities, including Mary, the mother of Jesus, and everyone else in the New Testament, show an unwillingness to leave alone the lives of others, or to have others leave alone their own life. You know, for Americans, biblical life is a smothering thing. In the West, we'd call it at best rude, at worst, codependent personality disorder. In the Bible, everybody's business is minding everyone else's business. In the Gospels, look how Jesus gets hounded all the time. Everybody is up in his business, wanting to know where he is going, what he is up to, what's he doing. That's exhausting Mediterranean life. Do you really want to be a biblical Christian, my American friend? Okay, well, you can forget about privacy then. And if you want a breather, you'll need another strategy. Primary reality. According to United States society, the basic belief is individualist realism. Americans, including United States Christians, believe that the individual is the primary reality, with society as a second order that is artificial or a derived construct. But Mediterranean folks, people like Jesus, Paul, and the evangelists, they hold the basic belief of group realism. For biblical people, society, groups, are believed to be the primary reality, while the individual is a second order, an artificial or derived construct. So biblical people cannot conceive of human life apart from some group. Anyone cut off from all groups is assuredly dead. In fact, worse than dead, because at least the Mediterranean dead get buried with their ancestors. That's the biblical way, folks. Jesus lived that way. When he left his Nazareth group, he immediately joined the faction of John the Baptist. Then John the Baptist dies, and immediately Jesus forms his own political faction. So to live biblically is to believe that there is no life except group life, no conscience except group conscience, no self except group self. That belief is instilled into Mediterranean people from youth, which brings me to psychological development of the child. In United States society, childhood psychological development focuses on separation, individuation, and leaving home in late adolescence, which is kind of like a second birth. To put it mildly, the idea that the child will never leave home is discomforting for both American parents and their children. What a contrast this is with Mediterranean biblical society. In the Bible, sons and daughters grow by means of codependence and group embeddedness. The process by which boys and girls are raised is dyadization, where everyone is a dyad or twin, an alter ego of everyone else. And the sons and wives get fitted into the paternal home upon marriage, rather early in adolescence. In fact, for the girl, ideally, in the Bible, that happens right after her menarche. And the ideal marriage partner? According to the Bible, that would be patrilateral first cousin, your father's brother's daughter. That's the ideal marriage partner implied by the New Testament. In the Mediterranean biblical world, the prospect of a son ever leaving home is terrifying for both parent and son. So imagine the terror of Mary when Jesus left Nazareth to go get baptized by John. Or the terror of Jesus being buried in a grave far away from his home village. Also note how Mediterranean Mary is with Jesus, how she behaves around him. In Mark, she calls him, wants to drag him home. At that time, he's presumably an adult male. She expects complete obedience and submission. Same thing at the wedding of Cana in the fourth gospel we call John. That's biblical mothering, folks. Gentle woman, quiet dove. Not really. Mary was Mediterranean, that's for sure. Do you really want that kind of a family? Is having such a biblical family really a moral imperative to you? Moral imperative. According to United States society, the moral imperative is be good because it makes sense. Be good because it is right, because it works, because it leads to competitive success. But according to the Mediterranean Bible, the moral imperative is be good to those in your group, so that people in your group would continue to help you, like you, love meaning to stick together with you. And the outsiders? Well, they are important only insofar as it impacts your in-group. Sorry, but Jesus and Paul and other New Testament personalities were not universalists. The worst thing the Matthean Jesus could call you was Gentile, a non-Israelite. So if you want to be a biblical follower of the historical Jesus, you need to be ethnocentrically particular to Israel, biblical Israel. Two problems I see in doing that. One, you aren't an Israelite. Two, that biblical Israel no longer exists. No, it also doesn't exist in our Jewish brothers and sisters. So can you really be biblical? Should you desire to be biblical? And while we're at it, what does being biblical mean anyway? What do you believe? Personal beliefs. For United States society, people discover their own personal beliefs in the isolation of their own private self. Americans, including United States Christians, see the self as autonomous. They imagine that self exists independently, entirely outside any controlling tradition and community. United States individuals see themselves as actually free to choose their tradition and community. In contrast, in Mediterranean biblical society, people discover their deepest beliefs in and through the group, the community, and its traditions. The biblical way rarely, if ever, provides an experience of an autonomous self. For biblical people like Jesus, it is rather impossible to imagine a self acting independently outside the inherited tradition and the community that upholds it. The identity question of biblical people like Jesus was never our Western, "Who am I?" Instead, biblical people asked those questions asked by Jesus in Mark chapter 8, verses 27 to 30. Who do people say that I am? And who do you plural, you my inner circle, who do you say that I am? Jesus needed others to tell him who he was. That's dyadic, that's a Mediterranean personality. The biblical way of discovering this important information, know thyself, is to derive it from significant others in your group, and not from your own personal individual inner voice. We have many more features to contrast, and we will soon. We need to grapple with how is the Bible, our normative, inspired literature of the church, applicable and relevant to us living today in this very different cultural context. I'll leave you with this. Sometimes you hear American Catholics and other Christians claiming to be biblical Christians and to believe in biblical Christianity. I laugh every time such ridiculous claims are made.